I never think these talks are ever going to be a last talk. My life is that when I finish talking here, I go to Colombo and give more talks. When I finish this retreat, there's another one coming up next somewhere. So to me, there's no such thing as a last talk or a first talk. You just keep on giving the best advice you can. But of course, there's always those times when I do have some, you might call it free time, and those times, those hours, when you can just be alone, I really try to stay alone. I've been to many places in this world, but then when people say, oh, you're giving a retreat in Toronto, why don't you come and have a look at Niagara Falls? And then I ask, why? If I want to see a waterfall, I'll go in the shower and turn on the shower in the bathroom. And sometimes you may be visiting. I was giving some talks in, of all places, Las Vegas a few years ago. There was a Sri Lankan doctor who used some of the advice which I'd given online in order to help her brother. Unfortunately, he passed away and she was quite depressed. So she invited me to give some talks over in Las Vegas. And they said, do you want to go and see the Strip? The what? I said, of course not, I'm a monk. We said, let's go and see that big dam. Was it Hoover Dam? Is that right? I said, now what do I want to see that for? You know, we have a dam in our monastery in Bodhinyana, as Venerable Posado knows. That's a dam. Do you want to see the Great Wall of China? No, I've seen many walls in Sri Lanka. In other words, that I prefer to have some peace and quiet rather than going seeing the sights. It was wonderful to see some of the sights in Sri Lanka many years ago, but it's kind of, I've ticked them off my list now. If I ever did go and anywhere in Sri Lanka, it would be a place where there's a nice cave. You can stay sort of a week there or somewhere and don't come out again for a week. That's the sort of stuff which you kind of like, because that invigorates your practice. You do those things and it inspires you and it gives your practice a boost. Because the talk today, which was asked from me, and I'm very happy to follow people's advice, was in this practice of meditation, in the practice of the Eightfold Path, and the aspirations to get stream winning and eventually nirvana. How can we sustain this practice? It's pretty easy, it should be when you're on a retreat here, because while you are on a retreat you don't have much business or responsibilities. You get out there and you do an arms round. If you miss the arms round, doesn't matter. One day without food doesn't kill you. And if you don't have many decisions to make, some of you are senior, all you do here is you get up in the morning, go for arms round, eat your food, listen to a talk, meditate, and have a wonderful holiday. And I call it a holiday because that's what a holiday is really meant to mean. A holy day. A day where you can relax and rest. And that's one of the other things about how to sustain this practice. You've heard me say many times that one of the important understandings to get into some nice deep meditation and also to live a great monastic life is learn how to relax to the max. Okay, that rhymes in English, relax to the max. But that is much deeper than many people imagine. It's a nice phrase you might see on a t-shirt, but it's more than just a phrase. These days it's very hard to see people who are relaxed. You walk through Sri Lanka, how many people do you see are really truly relaxed? They're all tense. They're worried about so many things. They're concerned about so many illnesses. They're just like COVID. You're concerned about cancers. You're concerned about so many things. Why? There's one place which I've been going to for almost, I think it's almost 34 years now. Every year I go to visit and give a talk at what's called the Cancer Research Association in Perth. That's what it started off as being called. Then it eventually became called Solaris Cancer Centre. It started off just as a few people in a communal venue. And now they have this big campus. And I do remember that when it was opened, the local government, the state government, put in a few $1 million to make this a really flashy, good-looking, comfortable new place for people who had cancer. And they had 2 VIPs to open it. The one VIP, he was the Premier of the state of Western Australia. His name was Colin Barnett. And the other VIP wasn't really a VIP, he was a VIM. A very important monk. And that was me. And when I was invited, I was surprised. They never invited an archbishop or a big captain of industry. And I asked them, look, honestly, give me some feedback. Why do you invite me to co-open this big centre? I'm a Buddhist monk. I make monasteries, not Cancer Support Association buildings. And then they told me why. They said that when I first went there to teach some meditation and to do whatever I could to help people who were suffering with cancer or friends and relations of those who had suffered or died from cancer, then one of the questions I received after my talk, and I'm always very happy to receive questions, and I apologize to those who asked these questions and there wasn't time to answer them all, but I did try my best. So anyway, the question was asked by this middle-aged woman. She had a terrible breast cancer. She had to have a mastectomy, her breast removed, and it was very painful having the surgery, chemotherapy and radiation therapy. Anyone who's known anyone who's gone through a cancer, it's a very unpleasant therapy. But even more than that, doesn't matter how unpleasant it is, that you think you might even die no matter what you do. It's a terrifying and unpleasant journey, and it doesn't just last a couple of weeks, sometimes a couple of years. So anyway, this lady, when she asked her question, she said she'd been through that, and it was very hard to bear. She's in remission. In other words, there's no cancer could be seen in her body, could be seen. But she said, I'm terrified. What would happen if that cancer came back? I don't think I could stand it. What would happen if it came back? And so there was many other questions I had to answer. So I didn't have the opportunity to answer at length. I just answered very powerfully. I told her what would happen if it didn't come back. And then I went on to the next question. And she was stunned. for all that time she'd always worried about what would happen if the worst occurred, if it came back. And I said the opposite. What would happen if it didn't? And she was really impressed with that. And she kept coming back every year to see me whenever I visited. The cancer never came back. She got the message. If you're worried about these terrible things which might happen, that causes this inattention inside of you. And that makes it more likely that the cancer will come back. But if you have that positive view about the future, what would happen if it didn't? Then it's more likely not to come back. You've got a much more positive mind state. And I think I've told you many times about those stories of the people who, because they have positive mind states close to the time of their death, they don't die. Please remember, it's not just your physical health, but your mental health, your positive energy, your peace, your kindness, the meaning that you give to your life. That is actually an important part of your health inside. And so anyway, I keep going back there every year. In fact, just about next month, they're coming to Bodhinyana Monastery for a visit. And it's wonderful they come there. Now, most of these are not Buddhists. They're all sorts of religions. But they've had a cancer, and they realize there's something about this Buddhism, this Dhamma, which is really, really helpful, which other people don't have. And just another story comes up before I go to the main part of this talk, how to sort of sustain your practice. And this was because, when I get around, I'm very happy to talk to many people in many places, that one of my friends, it was actually from the talks I used to give at the Cancer Support Association, one of my friends there was an Anglican chaplain at a very posh, very expensive private school in Perth. And the school was called Christ Church Grammar School. And again, because this was Perth, Venerable Pasado might know this, it's a very posh school. You just go in the grounds there, have these beautiful views over the Swan River. And it's really amazing real estate. I'm really surprised they haven't sold it yet. It's worth a fortune. But they haven't, thank goodness. And it's very beautiful there. So anyway, this chaplain said, Ajahn Brahm, you give good talks. Why don't you come to our school and give a talk at the morning assembly? I'm sure I can get this past the principal, even though the principal was a very devout Christian. Yeah, I'm sure he'll let you come and give a talk. So I turned up there one morning to give the talk. And when I turned up there, it had to be, right at the beginning of the day. And I had to wait outside with the chaplain and the principal, the headmaster. He said, we wait here and let all the children go inside. They're all boys, it was a boys' school. Let all the boys go inside, and when they're settled down, then we go in. We go in like as a procession, to give some respect to the principal, the chaplain, and our invited guests, this bald-headed Buddhist monk. And he said, it is our custom that there's a little statue of Jesus at the entrance. We are Christian, so we'll just bow a little to Jesus as we go in. But you're a Buddhist monk, you don't need to bow. And you know my character by now, I hope. I wasn't going to let this opportunity go past. I turned to the principal the headmaster, and said, "I demand my right to bow to your statue of Jesus." He was shocked. The way I said it was deliberately to try and shock him. I must admit that. He said, "What do you mean?" And I said, when I go, I'm not a Christian, I'm a Buddhist, a very devout Buddhist. When I go past that statue, I can see something in there which I can respect. Not all of it, but something in there. And that's what I'm going to bow to. He was surprised. And I did that. And when I gave my talk to the children, they're teenagers, I explained what I was doing. I said that even when I bow 3 times to the Lord Buddha, what am I actually bowing to? That is ceramic. There's nothing magical about what that's made out of. What's magical and helpful is what it represents to me. And I said, for many years now I've taught and I've practiced that when I do my 3 bows to a Buddha statue, and I love doing that, I really enjoy it. That's why, you see me coming in here, I'd bow to the Buddha statue. When I go out, I'd bow to it. Why? Because the first time I put my head down and bowed to that Buddha statue, I bow to the first thing it represents to me, which is virtue. Sila. But more than sila, even what you might call the adi sila, the sense restraint. Because I've seen virtue in our lands, in many countries. I've seen places or pockets of a country which forget their virtue, that they're not honest, where they maybe, yes, call it what it is, stealing, taking money from poor people through the misuse of taxes, not being trustworthy, cheating, not fulfilling their promises. I think you know what I mean. Even in villages in Sri Lanka, societies, governments, when people are not virtuous, it causes all sorts of difficulties and problems for so many people. But when people are virtuous, trustworthy, honest, they would never do anything to cheat someone else. Then that is inspiring. The sad thing, it's uncommon. And examples of that, when I started setting up Bodhinyana Monastery in Perth, I did mention I was a good meditator, sent to Australia. Before I was meditating, I was a theoretical physicist, and now you had to build that monastery. I had to learn how to do plumbing, how to weld copper pipes, how to lay bricks. I mentioned all that already, the bricks, and how to put roofs on. We did that because we couldn't afford to hire builders, and even the people who supported us, for many of them this was the first time they saw monks, and sometimes they wondered, who are these young men? When we worked really hard building, that got a lot of faith from many of our supporters. I remember one of the supporters, he was one of the Sri Lankan professors who came to Perth. I think he was the first person to be given a professorship at our University of Western Australia. He was Sri Lankan, and that was a bit sort of, in Australia at that time, quite newsworthy. And when he came to monastery and saw me not meditating, but up on a roof, fixing the roof up, he was shocked, but then inspired. Wow, You work really hard. So yeah, because it needs to be done. I'm not always going to be on a roof. When I come down, I'll go meditate. But the very fact that we were letting go of our own comfort really impressed him. But because of that also, you had opportunities, to go, with one of the lay people to get things like the timber for the roof. And I remember going to the wood shop, and we got all this timber which I'd worked out we needed, quite a lot of it. And when we put it into our van and took it back to our monastery, only when we got back to the monastery did I find out we had more timber than we paid for. It was an honest mistake. Just too busy, and somebody put the timber in and the guy never counted it. So what I did, the next day, the first opportunity, I went back there. And I said, we never paid for this yesterday. I showed him the bill. It was there, but we didn't pay for it. I'm sorry. Can you please put it on our bill, and our treasurer will pay for it? And I remember the guy behind the counter, it was like he had a stroke. He just stood there with his mouth open. And what? We took too much and it wasn't paid for. Can we please put it on our bill? And he said, wait for a moment. And he went up to see the manager of this big store. And then he came back and said, we can't believe this. No Australia builder would ever do what you've just done. And I was quite shocked and disappointed. What, being honest? I said, yeah. And so he said, we've decided to give you a builder's discount. It was about 5%. So in all those years we got our wood and other stuff from that particular shop. We saved so much more money by being honest that you wouldn't believe it. And of course they always trusted us from that day on. Virtue is a wonderful thing. Everybody tends to trust you, and they like working at places like Bodhinyana Monastery because they know they're going to get paid and everything's going to go fine. So it builds up this wonderful respect in the community in which you live. And not only that, when you're virtuous with one another as monks, as nuns, you will never cheat on anybody. You'll always be honest. And that's one of the reasons I've seen just in my life, in the life in monasteries, the life in countries, when you are virtuous, that creates a lot of simplicity and peace in our world. So when I bow my head the first time, I bow to virtue. It inspires me. It's like I put my head down there and the Buddha representing perfect virtue is up here somewhere. It reminds me of how important virtue is. You know how many times you bow every day. If you bow to what the Buddha represents like virtue, your virtuous conduct gets better and better and better. You're not just sustaining your practice, you're increasing it. And the next thing I bow to, the second bow, I think you probably guessed it already, is peace, which is one of the most important parts of meditation, to keep my body peaceful, my mind peaceful, my time peaceful. And when you see the power of that peace in meditation, wow, that power is huge. What do I mean by it being huge? It means that you have little sicknesses like scrub typhus, or you have, I think the other sickness I mentioned to you was food poisoning. You don't need to take medication if you've got this energy of peace. You make peace with it. You can actually feel what peace is. Everything relaxes. Everything gets at ease. And I know The Buddhism is almost a combination. Oh, actually, where I come from, there's lots of Chinese influence and Indian influence. In the Indian influence, we call about water, winds going through the body. In the Chinese tradition, like qi going through your body. You can actually, in meditation, sometimes you can feel those forces going through your body. You're not talking about blood or the breath. This is other things going through your body. And when you're at peace, you can relax without fear. It's amazing how smooth all those energies become. And they become healing rather than destructive of you. And that's one of the reasons why that body sweeping at the beginning of meditation teaches you just how to be really aware. I mean really aware of your body and how it works. And when you know how to be really aware, the next step of just relaxing it, opening it up, stopping all of these constrictions in your body, wow, that means the body heals really well. And now let's have some examples of that. One of the meditation retreats I taught many years ago, that even when I was meditating, somebody tapped me on the shoulder and said, Ajahn Brahm, I'm sorry to disturb you, but look. One of the ladies, she was a laywoman, she was meditating on my retreat and she was twisted around. Now I started to try and show you how much she was twisted around. This is maybe about a third of it. And then she went further around and was really contorted. If I showed you exactly how she looked, you'll have to take me to hospital too. I mean, she was really twisted. And so this woman who saw that, was really concerned. Look at her, we've got to do something. I was concerned too, because the way her body was, in a very abnormal position, that's going to do something bad to her body. But at least I had the wisdom to wait until the meditation finished. When the meditation finished, she straightened herself up, and I asked her to please, can I just have a quick word with you? And the first thing I said was, how do you feel? And she said, wonderful, fantastic, I feel really good. And then so the next thing I asked, I got the idea pretty quickly. I said, when did you have your car accident? That's why I asked her. And they said, Ajahn Brahm, you really do have psychic powers. I never told you that. I said, no, it's not psychic powers. As I said, you were really twisted when you were meditating. And I've seen this so many times, I know why now. When you get out of the way and stop controlling your body, when the body disappears from your awareness and you're just watching the breath or you're watching sort of a nimitta, then the body takes the opportunity. It starts twisting. You're not aware of it. You're aware of the nimitta or something, or the beautiful breath. It starts twisting around so that the parts of your body which were injured in these terrible motor car crashes, it twists around and the energy can go to where it's needed. The body knows where it should go to, but you can't actually get it to go there because you have to contort yourself into such a weird way. And that's what she did. So I said, well done. She was much better after almost contorting herself to the point that she needed to go to hospital. No, she felt fine. The body did that. The body was wise. And I'll also mention to you that sometimes in your meditation, when you're getting very peaceful and still, you get what I call hot spots in your body. Like it can be like in your neck. You feel just one area of your neck is extraordinarily warm, much more warm than other parts of your body. And it's not because the temperature, it's not because you're sitting in the sun. It means that your body has detected some problem there. And it sends extra energy to that part of your body. so much extra energy it starts to get warm. Many women have hot spots in their breasts. I don't need to tell you what that is. I will anyway. That's a cancer developing. And you see it before any doctor can see it. And when that hot spot happens, well done. You are going to get past a tumour and it doesn't develop. Your body gets there first and it heals it itself. There's this one guy in Penang. There's many people like this, but this story comes up. He had this very weird neurological condition. He did give me its name, but it's so rare there's only 2 or 3 people in the world get this. And somehow or other his neural passages all get twisted up. And it means that he doesn't have much time to live. But he said, fortunately, in Singapore, there was a doctor who was one of the only doctors who knew about this and who could treat it. But the treatment was extremely painful and expensive. They had to, they couldn't give him anesthetic. They had to put his basically head in a clamp so he couldn't move, and just open up his skull and just mess around with the brain, put it all together in the right way, and then close it up again. He said it was really unpleasant. But he went through that operation because he was getting married. And he thought, he's got to that point in his marital life, his social life, he doesn't want to let down the woman who's committed to him, and he's committed to her. So he went through this very painful operation, but they got it working again, his brain. But then he came to see me again. It was extremely rare, but the condition had reappeared. He'd come back again. They did these CT scans of his brain, and they could show him, look, it started to reoccur again. And he said, do you want us to do the operation again? What's the alternative? You'll die. And so dying was an option for him because it was so painful. But then his wife was pregnant. And again he thought it was not really virtuous to die and leave his wife without a husband. So he went down, actually before he went to Singapore, he came to see me in Penang when I was doing a retreat there and said, Ajahn Brahm, please help. What can I do? Because this is just so, really unpleasant. So I taught him some meditation. And there's one thing about meditation. If you are desperate, because you've got a cancer or something really terrible is happening, it's amazing just how much energy you can put into the meditation. You don't feel like, I'll do it this afternoon. No, I don't feel good today. I might have a rest and then I'll do it this afternoon. It's from stories like that I get that phrase I've already told you. When is the best time to meditate? Morning, afternoon, evening? The best time to meditate is now. When's the worst time to meditate? Later on. It's a nice phrase. It's very powerful. So anyway, he did his meditation quite diligently. And then a few days later he came up to Penang again. I was still at the retreat. And he said, you wouldn't believe this, Ajahn Brahm. I said, I think I can believe it. You came back there so quickly. He said, I went to Singapore for the operation. And they even just had me all prepared with this big clamp over my head so I couldn't move. But the way doctors work, they always want to do a test before the operation. So they gave him a CT scan of his brain. And then, having finished the CT scan, they said, we think there may be something wrong with the machine. Can you come in again for a second CT scan? And if ever you are in a trouble like that, and that's what the doctors say, yes. There was nothing wrong with the machine. He just went into that machine for the second time, and the doctors say, I don't know what's happened. It's all fixed itself up. You don't need a scan. You don't need an operation. You can go home. You wouldn't believe just what your body can do. But that meditation is very refined, weird disease, fixed itself. So you can see how happy he was. And not just how happy he was with me, but how much happiness he gave to me. When people give you that feedback, they had this terrible disease, and now it's gone. You feel like, yes, the power of the Dhamma. So anyway, the power of peace in meditation, whoa, that saved my life so many times. To be able to go and sit down and get some nice deep meditation. You know, one of the other things which I do, I'll share this with each one of you, sometimes I get to be extremely busy. Many talks I have to give. And sometimes you've got them all kind of planned. You can take a bit of a rest between, have a shower, have a cup of tea. But it doesn't always work like that. Sometimes if something goes wrong, there's some sort of emergency, you get stuck in traffic, you arrive there really, really, really late. Oh my goodness, there's 1,000 people waiting for me to give a talk. And I'm just dead. I'm just no energy left at all. And how I deal with that, and it does work. And please, I'm not trying to praise myself, I'm just trying to share this with you so you can practice this as well. Try and find some quiet place for even just a quarter of an hour. Half an hour is much better. But I did this recently. I think this was over in, I think it was in Melbourne, when I was helping with their waste sack ceremony over there. I was exhausted. Something had gone wrong. I had about 20 minutes, and then we'd have this big talk. So I found a quiet place and meditated. Meditated just in peace for a quarter of an hour, 20 minutes. That's all I had. Actually, I remember where this was now. This was just coming back from Melbourne. You know, sometimes the flights are delayed. When one flight is delayed, your connecting flight doesn't connect anymore. It's already left. You have to get another flight. And that's just quite stressful. And I had to get back in time to give a talk in another place. I had only about half an hour to get ready to give a talk. So I just asked the other monk with me, just leave me alone for a quarter of an hour so I could meditate. That's all I had. And I remember that experience. It was only 2 or 3 weeks ago. You're sitting down there. You feel really exhausted. It's sloth and torpor for a good reason. I didn't have any food that day. Just we missed out on the food. And you were tired. And then you start to meditate. You know how to be peaceful. And when you're peaceful, you're still, you don't move. The energy starts coming back. Huge burst of energy coming back. Quarter of an hour, you can feel your body straighten up. You feel the mind getting energized. You feel like sparks coming out of your ears. No sparks were coming out of my ears, but you know that's kind of how it feels. You're energized again. And so then I could give it a good talk. I actually did a half an hour meditation before, and I was really surprised. I never fell fast asleep during the meditation. Jet lagged, tired, hungry, but still you could really get into it. That's the power of peace. To keep your energy up, keep your health up, let alone finding the peace of wisdom. How many talks have I given over the last week? I don't know now, at least 2 a day, plus a guided meditation and other interviews. And I was thinking this morning, I've run out of talks. What else can you talk about? But when you meditate, you get your energies coming back and innovation. So I worship peace. I worship it. What does that mean? Its worth is so great for me that when I bow down, I think of peace and how much it's given me over the life of a monk which I've lived, how it's empowered me. It's not me, it's the peace. So I bow down and put peace way above my head. I worship you, I can see its value. Every time I bow, I remember that value of peace. It's one of the reasons why it's not worthwhile getting angry, getting upset, getting negative. Many people get angry and upset and negative, but why? It doesn't make any sense. You're just wasting, destroying something you value so much. Would I come in here with a hammer and bash the Buddha and smash it to bits? Of course not. That just makes no sense. That's destroying what I think is incredibly valuable. This is not a solid gold Buddha statue. It's much more valuable than that. It's what it symbolizes, the peace. And the last thing which I bow to should really be wisdom, but to me I actually adapt that to compassion, kindness, which is part of wisdom. Because every time I see a kind act, I mean really kind, you're letting go of what's yours and giving it to somebody else. You're being extra kind. It's not asked of you. Sometimes if some senior monk sees me, they think, that's not what you're supposed to be doing, Ajahn Brahm. But I can't resist it. I mentioned one silly story, a very simple story. Just going through Singapore airport, transiting from one plane to another plane. And I saw this Westerner, a lady. She was trying to get some sleep between flights, and she was on one of the benches in the concourse, and she was going this way and that way. And I reached into my bag, and one thing I had there was the eye shades which they give you on the aircraft so you can sleep. I'd done the night trip already. So I just saw this lady, and a Westerner, I didn't know what country she was from. I said, look, I've got these eye shades here, they're for you. And she said, what? They're for you, here you are. And she accepted them and put them on so she could get a little bit of sleep. That's not the duty of a bhikkhu to give eye shades to a young woman. In fact, if somebody had seen me, said, what, do you know her? Or what are you trying to do? But of course you did that because it's just a moment of kindness. Whenever I've seen things like that and other people, why not? It's a beautiful thing to do. And those acts of kindness and compassion, when you look after each other, even on this retreat, some people may be sick, and somebody else volunteers to do the translation. That's a great act of kindness. And so that inspires me. And every one of you, that somebody may have left their cushion back on, you give them your cushion, or you give them a glass of water. You're looking out for them to try and make sure that they're at peace and they're happy. They haven't got to live back to where they're going. You say, oh, you come in my car. Whatever it is, that acts of compassion, they make a warm sangha. This is the first time I've seen many of you. Sometimes I've known for years. But it's wonderful when you see one another and somebody has a question to ask. Yeah, what's your question? What can I do for you? And I, as a senior monk, what can I do for you? Not what you can do for me. That's the kindness and compassion which makes this monastic life beautiful. And I'm really just so impressed by especially all the upasakas and upasikas at the back over there. People who fed me, looked after me, got me water and tea and tinkiri. Why? This is beautiful, that kindness which gives you happiness, gives me happiness. That's one of the things which I usually say in the Anumodana, that whatever talk I give, it's a good talk, inspiring talk, you're part of it. All those people who brought me breakfast, all those people who helped up, all those people who just cleaned up the dishes afterwards. I can clean up the dishes, fine, but I will never do that, not because I can't do it, because I'm lazy, to give you the opportunity to make some good karma. That's compassion. And anyway, that's what I bow to. When I see the kindness in monastic life, especially in a monastery where people are always looking out for one another. A monk doesn't come for lunch. And then sometimes, did anyone check up on him? And I'm very proud of the monks who I've trained. They said, yes, of course we did. He was just, didn't want to eat today. He's got a sore tummy or something. Fine. Please make sure he has enough. He wants something from the afternoon, some fruit juice or something. And of course they do that. They care for one another. And that makes it a very pleasant Sangha to live in. So pleasant. The problem is, the downside is, there's never enough room for everybody. It's just too nice. So anyway, those compassion is really important for me. So that's my third bow, to compassion. To virtue, peace and compassion. My little interpretation of Sila, Samadhi and Panya, what the Buddha represented to me. So every time I do that, it's so easy to bow. And I love it. It's not just a ceremony, it's got real meaning behind it. So when I told that at this Christian school, the principal decided, this is what I want my kids to understand. So they organised a trip, get the buses and go to Bodhinyana Monastery. And on that day the principal arrived in his car, not in the bus. And so I met him at the gate. We went into our main hall, beautiful main hall, this big Buddha statue. And I wish there was a camera or video of this, because I was squatting next to the very devout Christian principal, and we both bowed 3 times to the Buddha statue. He's not converting him to being a Buddhist, but he understands why we bow. And that's one of the reasons why, when I explain that to the Westerners who come to our temple, they begin by saying, we're not going to bow and kowtow to these images. That's just too Asian for us. But when you explain why, they get into it. It's a beautiful way of remembering what's really important. And remembering what's really important is what I was meaning to say about how to sustain your practice. In other words, why not? You're a nun, you're a monk, upasaka, upasika. You've come across this Dhamma. I don't care whether you're a Christian, a Hindu, a Buddhist or whatever. It's beautiful. It's meaningful. It keeps you in good health. It keeps you happy and virtuous. Doesn't Sri Lanka need more people like that? So you cultivate that practice. And when you cultivate that practice, you find this is really important. And it's not a hard thing to do. To relax to the max, which is what I always wanted to talk about. Another description of what relax to the max is called meditation. The ultimate relaxing to the max, or close to the ultimate, is jhanas. Weird. You think, jhanas takes such a lot of hard work. No. You have to start learning more about how to relax. Not just to relax to the max. You sit down. I don't know, I've been meditating for so many years now, about 55 years now. How old am I now? Yeah, about 55 years now. So I'm comfortable meditating like this. Sometimes when I'm talking, I need to put my foot down or something, but that's not much. This is one of the most comfortable postures for me. And especially when I straighten my back and close my eyes, it gets really comfortable. And how can I meditate for long periods of time, like hours? You have to relax. So I sometimes feel, say like I was saying about my shoulders. How do you relax? How do you let go and relax? One of the ways I do this, and if you don't know how to let go and what it actually is by an experience, I sometimes scrunch my shoulders up as tight as they could be, really scrunch them. And then I let go. And they are more loose than when I started. It's like you take a ball and it's halfway up a hill. To actually get it further down the hill, you don't throw it down the hill, you make it higher up the hill. It gets higher up the hill, then you let it go, and because it falls down, it's got so much speed and momentum, it goes down lower down the hill than it was before. That's one of the ways I relax. Scrunch up, then let go. And it's also, you understand what it means to let go. And when you can relax your body like that, it develops what we call resilience. You don't tend to get sick. To understand that, I don't know how many of you have played string instruments like guitars when you were young. Remember, how does a guitar work? You got the guitar string and you stretch it. When it's stretched and very tight and very tense, when you pluck it, bing, it makes a high-pitched noise. Bing! Now imagine that same guitar string when you start to loosen the tension. Then you pluck it, boom. It still makes a noise, but much lower pitch and not as loud. And when you totally relax it, it makes no noise at all. That's called the secret of resilience. Your body, many bacteria, viruses will hit it. Why does the body react and get infected? This is Ajahn Brahm's idea. You won't find this in a medical journal, so please don't sue me. But it tends to work. When you're really relaxed, even if you fall, you don't bruise. Ever read those cases of the children who fall 3 or 4 stories off a balcony? Because they don't know what's going on, they relax and they don't get so heavily bruised like you would, or I would. So when you learn how to relax the body deeply, even your digestive system, you get much better digestion. In other words, you get healthier. Relax to the max. That's just with the body. And then you learn how to relax to the max in your mind. What is peace anyway? Relaxing. Do you always have to strive and work? This afternoon, I forget exactly what time now, later on in the afternoon, I'm going to Colombo. And people say, oh, you've got to get here at a certain time. No, whenever you get there, that's when we get there. When you relax and don't worry so much, you can drive easier, you enjoy the drive, and it's also you usually get there earlier. The more tense you are, the longer it takes, and the longer it feels as well. So when you're meditating, you really make peace. There's hardly any thoughts in your mind at all. The thoughts are kind of like the enemy of peace. It's like the dogs barking. They're your thoughts, but they kind of don't belong to you. And when you learn how to be at peace and relax, you don't really concern with those thoughts or those dogs barking. You can be silent. What do you do next to get into deeper meditation? How can you watch the breath? Relax. When you relax, the breath comes to you. I don't go searching for the breath. When I'm relaxed enough, that's when the breath comes in. It's kind of like it's waiting for me. Say, are you relaxed enough yet? Ajahn Brahm, no, he's not relaxed enough yet. No, I'm not going in now. But when I really am relaxed, the breath comes in. And I'm relaxed with the breath. As I mentioned a few times, my breath is my friend, a really close friend. I spend hours together, just my breath and I, hanging out together all day sometimes. And so we're so relaxed in each other's company. That's why we're at ease with each other. Now, imagine you are with somebody, and then you're afraid of that person. You don't know what that person's going to ask you. That person might tell you off. A really senior monk. Many of you walked with me, had breakfast with me, lunch with me, with Ajahn Brahm. Are you tense? Some of you weren't you? You're stupid. Please don't be tense. Instead, relax and enjoy the breakfast. You digest it much better. But why on earth can't two monks be relaxed in each other's presence? Why can't you and your breath be totally relaxed to the max? And it's no effort. See, this is where I have my rest. I don't have my rest just watching a TV. I don't have my rest going touring around sites. I have my rest being with my friend. We really do relax in each other's presence. And when you relax to the max with your breath, soon this joy comes up. That's what happens when you relax. You enjoy it. And sometimes that relaxation gets to bliss. These beautiful nimittas. Yeah, I agree that when they first come up, they're a bit powerful for you. But after a while, you learn to relax in the presence of powerful people. They're only human beings if they're presidents or prime ministers or dictators or whatever. They're human beings. You see the humanness in them. You can really relax. You know, sometimes I've visited prisons, and some of the people in the prisons were actual psychopaths. Really dangerous people. I remember going into a prison in Broadmoor in England to see Ronnie Cray. Do any of you remember Ronnie Cray? He was one of the Cray brothers. I mean, they were really violent. Say like psychopaths, who can actually just kill someone, break their skulls open, and don't really feel a thing. You know what Ronnie Cray said to me? I've only seen him once. Oh, thank you for visiting. If ever I have a few quid, I'll send it to your monastery. He wanted to do Dharma. He didn't have any quid or any money at all, but still it was a nice gesture. And that was someone you should be really scared of. But you weren't. I relax. When I relax, they relax. When they relax, I relax. So we can actually be friends. That's what I mean by relaxing to the max. And then you relax into the max with these powerful nimittas. What happens next? Jhanas. That's what happens when you have peace. You know how to relax. So is that a burden? Do I say, I've got to get jhana now? Come on, Ajahn Brahm. Let's go for it. You don't grit your teeth to get these deep meditations. You relax to get these meditations. And if people say, if you relax, I'll just get these wandering thoughts, that's not relaxation. That's busyness. And if they say, I'll fall asleep if I relax too much, again, that's not relaxation. The sleepiness is when you escape to this dullness. You're not really there to relax. You just zonked out. But when you really know how to relax to the max, then these wonderful states happen, whether you like it or not. Of course you do like it, but nevertheless, it's all about relaxing. Wouldn't you like to spend the rest of your life relaxing? Would you like to retire? I mean really retire. Have just nothing to do but just bliss out every afternoon. Sounds good, doesn't it? That's how to sustain your practice. You realize how easy it is, how beautiful it is, what a great example it is for other people. No effort, full results. Can't get better than that. The cheapest and the best. Thank you. And thank you for taking those notes. It's really hard to do because if you're taking notes to translate afterwards, you can't fully enjoy the talk because you've got to be more focused on making sure you get everything down. But if you do miss anything, don't worry about it. You've got my full forgiveness. I'm just very grateful you spend the time doing this.